What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be making a tank tier list for the Damned Frontier patch, so that means Raum will be included. We're just going to go A to Z, cover all the tanks, give you my opinion on them. Do remember that this is my opinion, and you're allowed to have your own opinion. We can discuss it in the comments. I like discussing tanks and hearing what you guys think is strong about them, what's weak about them, what you want nerfed, what you want buffed. That's all good stuff. So go ahead and just leave that in the comment. Be friendly about it. I don't want anyone like saying my opinion's better than yours. They're just opinions. Let people think, Don't be that guy. But we're gonna go ahead and get into the video. First, we're gonna just start A to Z. First being Ashe. I'm going to put her at B. B for balanced. I think Ashe is a pretty good tank. She has a good amount of sustain and durable with her dash DR. I think she's in like an ideal spot for a tank. She has good mobility, a good engagel, decent amount of CC with her 2 knockbacks. She lacks a little bit of damage and she struggles early on without her ult or cauterize rezill. She gets countered out by stunning her dash. Her dash has a lot of her mobility and her survivability. The 90% DR from battering ram helps her stay alive. But overall, she's a really good tank. Her shield's really good. It's like helpful to be able to shoot and shield. You can also have a teammate push with it as well. It's a good shield, great engage ult. You can dash in, stun, bonk your head, hit multiple backliners, as well as just keep yourself up. It's almost kind of like a second life where you bonk your head, you get your ult down, and then you're immune for 8 seconds. Close to like Makoa ult, but not really as good. Moving on to the next tank, we're going to be talking about Atlas. He did get nerfed this patch. He got cripple on a second chance, and his Beyond the Veil got nerfed, which actually hurts his mobility a little bit. But I am going to be putting him at A. I think A's a good spot for him. He's above average. I don't think he's like. I think he still probably needs to be nerfed like a little bit, maybe not. We have to see how he does in the meta. The main reason why I think he's a little better than Ashe, or not Ashe, just better than the balanced average ideal tank spot is he's a really good shield. It can't be broken at all. Temporal Wall Divide made him really strong in competitive play. This ability just let your entire team just control a side of the map with his wall. You just wall it. The other team can't really pressure you. They either have to push through it or they have to give space. With Beyond the Veil giving 50% move speed, your teammates could just run through it as well as you, and just get an insane amount of speed, and you could just run down the enemy team. With that being nerfed, it's not as good, but I still think Temporal Divide, does its job. Still gives you a decent amount of move speed, but the main important thing is that it lets you control the map very well. He has a really unique skill in Setback. Setback is an ability that lets you like reposition enemies based on where they were previously at. If you think about it, no other tank really has this kind of ability other than like Koa Hook is like another one that kind of repositions enemies. So it's a really good ability. His ult is good, but it's not insane. Doesn't do anything super good. Doesn't help him stay alive, which is like kind of the weaker point of his kit. You can get canceled out of it, but overall it does get countered by resilience as well. Still good ult, good for zoning when people are trying to push point and you're trying to stop them from touching. You could banish out, their healer. That's something I like to do. I'd banish the healer twice and just look at different targets. If their healer's not healing their team and they're stuck in a banish, it's really good for us. So another good strong suit of Atlas is he is probably the best range poked out of any tank. His gun is extremely versatile. You can use it at close range, you can use it at long range. It's good against other tanks that have big headshots like Makoa and Barik. You could just melt them. He's also really good at just nuking damages from really far away because of that range. But he is kind of lacking mobility. He doesn't really have an escape other than a second chance. So most of your mobility is from moving forward and moving in a direction and then using second chance to put yourself back. But other than that, he has low mobility, which kind of hurts him. Next up is Barik. Barik is actually one of I think he probably is the best point tank in the game. He has an insane amount of shielding with 3 sources of it. He has this Fortify, he has both boots from Failsafe and just the normal CD, as well as his ult. Dome Shield is actually insanely strong. You can use it really aggressively, you can use it defensively, you can use it for point. Let's say you're at 99% and the other team has to touch. You can just dome straight on point. Your team can play around it. They can push into it to stay alive. Flamethrower turret does a ridiculous amount of damage. I think it does 600 damage per second. Pretty much any squishy that gets touched by the burn is probably going to die. Even like EVs who ever blink into a dome shield, they get melted instantly. It's really good to get tanks. It pretty much never breaks either because it has 20,000 HP. Tinkering, really good talent for him. Makes his gun really, really good. It's great against tanks. It's great against damages. Great against flanks. He is really good at poke with it. And kind of makes him like a really big threat from that capture point. He's actually really hard to lock down because of his sustain. He has healing station that keeps him healthy around his turrets. His turrets can also body block for him. Not to mention that, you know, bowling ball gives him a ridiculous amount of shielding on each dash, so he has a movement ability that comes up twice when he gets low. He gets extra shielding whenever he dashes, so he's just really hard to lock down, really hard to kill. You need to buy a ton of record to help deal with him. Does good damage. Most barracks, whenever they come out of a game, you'll see their stat lines will have an insanely high amount of damage as well as good shielding, which is why I think he's really good tank. Probably needs a little bit of nerfs to tune him down, put him into a good spot. We'll have to see how the Season 3 changes affect Wrecker and Fortify, but for right now, he's a good tank. Definitely want to be picking him, playing him on point. Next, we are going to look at Fernando, who I actually think is the weakest tank of the game right now. Going to be putting me at D for doo-doo, because he's not very good. In all honesty, he's really not that bad. I just think he's really weak in comparison to the other tanks. Just looking at, you know, the tanks that I mentioned there, like Barik and Atlas, they're all really, really strong, have unique kits. His shield, like Atlas's shield, you can shoot. You don't have to hold up the entire time, which is kind of the weak point of Fern. You could shield, but you can't really shoot. You can't do anything. All you can do is shield for your team. Once you put it down, it also goes on cooldown. It also gets canceled out by a lot of the other tanks' CCs. Con grab, you can co-hook behind it, you can set back him, and it'll drop a shield. Floor of Silence, Inara's like to save their ult and just ult your shield whenever you put it up. He does have a really good teamfight ult, but other than that, he just, I don't know, he lacks a lot of damage. He is very low ranged poke. His cauterize isn't terrible, it's much better than Terms. But again, not much range, not much damage. The nerf to Scorch, made it much harder for him to pressure damages and flanks. One thing that made his kit a lot better was having the mobility of Hot Pursuit, which gave you 10% per level move speed for 3 seconds when you hit a fireball. That's kind of gone, so getting your shield stunned was a lot. It wasn't as bad back then because you had mobility to get away, you had mobility to reposition yourself. But now, if you get your shield like stunned out, 8-second CD, you're not in the best position ever. You don't have much mobility. If you're getting your shield stunned too, you're not going to be able to get that proc from heat transfer that gives you your dash back. So the low mobility definitely makes him really, really, really bad. He's not that strong of a character. You could definitely use some buffs, but we'll see what they do when they nerf tanks and Wrecker in general. Next, we're going to be looking at Inara, who's another strong tank. I'm going to be putting her in B with Ashe. She's good, but she also has some weaknesses. She's in a pretty good spot. I actually don't think she needs a nerf. I think she's fine where she's at. She's really strong because she doesn't get countered by Wrecker. She has with Mother's Grace, it gives her the strongest CC immunity and damage reduction in the game. It lasts 5 seconds. It's on a really short CD, I think of 7.5 if you run all of the cooldown reduction cards. So she has a really high sustain in that ability. If you have a healer right behind you pocketing you, which usually are, she just becomes a really, really hard target to deal with. Her walls, a unique ability, no one else has it. You can wall off a lot of choke points. You can catch people out, make them stuck. People kind of have to buy Bulldozer to counter it, which is not an item that people always want to be picking up. You obviously pick it up a lot more nowadays because of IO, but before IO was in the game, you honestly never went Bulldozer. Bulldozer was a less picked up item for sure. Her ult is really strong. It's a 2-second stun. Doesn't do that much damage. It only does 500. It's not as strong as ult as Dome Shield, I think, for point pressure and being aggressive. It does get countered out later on in the game once everyone buys Resilience. Resilience is a powerful card. Everyone's been picking it up. One strong suit about Inara is that she doesn't get countered by Wrecker. It's really, really important to remember. You can pair this up, like when you have a tank lineup and you're drafting, if you have Inara, let's say Inara Ruckus or something, your Ruckus is the only Wrecker. Like, people are going to have to force to pick it up just for the Ruckus. Compared to, like, let's say a tank lineup like Con Barik. Having Con Barik, you know both their tanks are susceptible to Wrecker, so if you rush that, you'll have a much better time with dealing with them. Inara kind of gives you that, hey, you can't counter me with Wrecker, you have to go cauterize, you have to rush that and make sure that I don't sustain up forever. So it's a good option, good pick. I think she's in a good spot. I don't think she needs nerfs or buffs. We'll see how she is with the record changes. Next, we're going to be looking at Khan. Khan is a really good tank. Going to be putting him at A next to Atlas and Barik. Storm of Bullets, his most picked talent, is really strong. It makes him deal an insane amount of damage to squishies and to tanks. It's hard to ignore a Khan because he does so much damage. Shout, his kit is just insane. Shout's an amazing ability. It gives him great staying power. You can pretty much iframe most like ults. Let's say you're getting a Inara ulted, you can iframe most of the stun, not all of it, but you know you'll counter out most of the damage that's coming towards you. You can counter BKO, Zen ult. There's a bunch of different things that you can do with Shout. It's just a really good utility tool. You can heal your teammates. It just counters all sorts of abilities and gauges on him, and it makes him really hard to lock down. His ultimate is extremely good. It's a free pick if you land it. Your team can help you kill them. If it's a squishy, it doesn't take that long. If not, you can throw them off the map if they're a character like Raum, who has no good reliable escape to get back on the map. He also has a really good loadout cards. He has Hope Card, Never Surrender, Into the Breach, which are just 3 off the top of my head that I almost always run. Into the Breach giving him speed, Hope Card giving him that extra rejuve when he has a shield up, and Never Surrender, which just makes his shout on a lower cooldown, which is what you want. His dash is actually also really good because it helps you deal with a lot of tanks. You can force them out of their important CDs and shields. So those, and a few examples being Koa shield you can break, Nano shield you can stop. Term Symphon, if he puts Symphon up and you grab him, he has to wait for 1 second to put it back up, and it kind of puts him in a bad spot because you're behind him. Ashe, you can cancel her dash. Barik, if he's low and you see he's about to get his fail-safe off, you can dash at him, stop him, and grip him, let your team burn down, and hopefully not get that extra 1500 shielding from Bowling Ball. Same thing with Atlas. You can look to grab Atlas when he's low. Hopefully your team does enough damage to burst him out of it, and he can't get a second chance off. So, really strong kit. Good amount of damage, great ult. He's in a really good spot. He's a strong tank. I would try and pick him as much as you can if Koa, Raum, Atlas are banned. It's a good pick. Probably needs to be nerfed for sure. Next, we're moving on to the good old turtle, Koa. I'm going to put Koa at SS. I think he's the best tank in the game. His hook ability is unmatched when it comes to getting picks, catching people out, as well as canceling CDs. You can cancel a bunch of cooldowns. You can cancel Ashe Dash. You can catch Burn if you go behind his shield. Atlas, you can hook him when he's low and stop him from getting that second chance off. So it makes it, there's definitely things that you have to play around when you have a Koa on the other team. His ultimate is a free HP reset. Leviathan kind of juices it up even more, giving him CC immunity. You can't really stop him whenever he ults. He's just going to run on top of you, pop his ult. And his cards actually synergize really well with it. Surf lets him get in more. Rampage gives you that move speed if you get a kill. So if you get a kill and then pop your ult, you have move speed for 6 seconds. No one's really going to get away from you. So it's a really strong ult. Free HP reset, once again. Can't stress that enough. You can be really aggressive, take a ton of damage, and then just look to pop your ult and be full HP again. That's one of the strongest parts of his kit, just being super aggressive. He has really high base HP with Leviathan giving him 600 extra. He doesn't really have to invest in HP cards. He can look to just invest all of his loadout cards into utility and sustain, helping him stay alive, as well as mobility. His gun is rather hard to use, but I think it's strong. It's good against all rolls. 650 damage is no joke. You don't even have to run pluck. His damage is good enough where if you get a hook onto his squishy, shoot them once, your team is bound to follow up. If not, you're already in a good spot. So I'm going to be putting him at SS. I think he's the best tank in the game. Next, we're going to be looking at Raum. Raum is going to be at S. He's very strong. I think he's better than Atlas and Khan. While he doesn't do some things they do, he does a lot of... He has basically an insane amount of mobility. He is probably the beefiest tank in the game by far, even without a shield. Enforcer, the talent that gives him 75% DR, provides him with a good escape tool and a gauge tool. His ult is strong and it's super unique. It's the only thing that can break wall really fast. It can break dome shield. It can break Luna Fox, which is really interesting. So there's tons of stuff to play around with his ult. It's also a stun, does 900 damage, really big cone. I think he's a really strong ult. So he has great damage reduction cards as well. He has I think 25% DR for 3 seconds whenever he pops his ignition, 25% DR for 3 seconds whenever he pops his soul collect. So good sustain. The only really counterplay to Raum is his HP percent damages, those being Tyra, Firebomb, Cassie, Sky, Cassie Big Game, Sky Debilitate. There's not many of them, which is why I think he's really strong. Stuns and cripples are very strong with him against him because it stops his dash. He's very slow. I think you kind of have to ignore him, but if you can't, it's really hard to deal with him. Especially if you don't have cripples. If you don't have anything to do with his dash, he's going to be going into your team with his dash. He's going to be sustaining with his DR, and he's going to be dashing out again because it comes up so fast. So if you don't have answers for his dash, he's a much harder character to deal with, especially if you don't have the damage like I was talking about, you don't have the cripples. It's very hard to deal with him. Next, we're going to be looking at Ruckus. Ruckus, my favorite tank. I'm going to be putting him at B with Inara and Ashe. I think he's in a good spot. He has like his own niche strong suits, and while also being like a unique tank in the way that he's really weak, he's fragile, he's not as beefy as the other ones. He doesn't have a shield that he deploys. It's a personal shield. He has the highest damage output from a tank. He's a great flanker. He's really good at nuking backlines. If you get it on a Genos' Ruckus, you're pretty much killing him every single time, no matter what, unless you misplay. His dashes provide him with good mobility to get around maps. There's a ton of jumps that you can do. You can check out my Serpent Beach video with Ruckus, where I show you some of the jumps that you can do to get to high ground. No other tank can really do that. They usually have to wall up there as Inara, jump up his Term, but ult up his Ashe. But you know what I'm getting at here. He has really good mobility. There's a bunch of maps that you can do where you can get to high ground places and places that other tanks can't usually get. His shield is emitter. It's not amazing. It's good solid ability that you can use if you use it correctly. It's definitely a lot harder to get value out of compared to something like Ashe shield or Barik shield. But this is kind of like the reason why Ruckus is in a good spot. He's got high damage, good mobility, but he's also susceptible to burst. He doesn't have that much. He's really not that beefy. His ultimate's also pretty solid, does a lot of damage. You can combo with a lot of things. You can dome shield, push into it, ult. You can Fern ult with it. There's a bunch of different combos you can do with it, and I think it's really good just because of the highest damage output game. It is also much harder to use compared to like something like Co-ult or Ashe ult. There's no real like second life that you can get from it. By second life, I mean you can Ashe ult, you're going to live for 8 more seconds. You can Co-ult, you're going to be full HP again. So he's kind of weak in terms of that, but overall I think he's a balanced tank. He's in a good spot. He's probably going to get changed soon. I don't know. They were hinting at stuff like that. I'm not really sure where that's at. But he can be shut down if you don't allow him to get flanks off. Like you're always watching for the Ruckus and you're poking him out before he gets just a good dive in. You're dismounting him. It's much harder for him to do his job. Cassie is one of the biggest counters to him, as well as Wrecker, Vivian, and Vic. Vivian and Vic are obviously good dive targets, but if they're being aware of where you're diving from and they're allowed to poke you out before you get in, you're gonna have a much harder time getting your dive off. And you're probably gonna feed, because sometimes I feed on Ruckus too, and sometimes they're just hard games for Ruckus. Next, we're gonna be looking at Term. Term is at C. Term's a bit better than Fern just because he's a niche pick. He's good on certain maps such as like Ice Mines, Bright Marsh, Jag. His Symphon gets good value there. He's a very big counter to a lot of the blasters like Drogos. Drogos, he's allowed to Symphon his Spit, his Rockets, his Salvo. So he does have his place in the meta. He also, like I said, like Inara, he doesn't get countered by Wrecker, which is a really good reason to pick him up. He doesn't have a big issue of not being able to cauterize very well. His caught is very underwhelming, and most Term players usually opt to just go like other cards. They go yellow cards, green cards, blue cards. But they stay away from cauterize. They even go like bulldozers sometimes, but caught's just not that great on him, which is kind of an issue because of how good cauterize is. He has a good ultimate, which provides him with a second life, allowing him to be really aggressive and push in, and then just pop his ult, get his HP back, and he can just keep going. Overall, good ult, good pick on certain maps, but he does have his weaknesses, and he's just kind of weak because of that cauterize thing, which is why I'm putting him at C. Probably could use a buff, but we'll see. Lacking range really hurts him. That's like his biggest weakness. And last but not least, we have Torvald. Torvald, I'm also going to be putting at C. Like Term, he's kind of a niche pick. He's good on maps like Frog Isle. Ice Mines is actually a decent map for him if you can pair him up with a damage, which is actually his strongest suit. If you pair him well with damage picks such as BK, EV, Zin, which are the top 3 in my opinion, you can enable them to be really annoying flanks and damages that do a high amount of damage that are also really hard to kill because of that 2k shield. Torv kind of forces teams to play differently. They have to rush Wrecker to help deal, and in order to help them deal with the shield. Sorry, I can't talk. He has a good ult, which provides a ton of utility. You can force teams off cap, you can push them away. You can ult teams off the map, such as Frog Isle. Great map for him. Pretty much got a ton of ult opportunities there. Can be canceled out, so it's not an amazing ult, but you know, it still has its uses. The issue with him is that he doesn't have good cauterize like Term as well. Most Torvalds opt to just go Chronos and get max value out of his shield because of this. He just doesn't do that much damage. He's not very good at getting on backliners and dueling them. He doesn't have, you know, much CC and lockdown. All you have is the silence. But he does have a silence. That's another thing I actually forgot to bring up. It's a unique ability. No one else really has a silence that prevents you from using abilities. You can walk up to an EV, you could silence her, which is actually a huge counter to her. If the EV blinks in and you silence her, she's pretty much dead 100% of the time. Like, she can't do anything. The field study nerf definitely makes him a lot weaker, but he's not permabanned. You can deal with him. He's also, like I said, he makes you play the game a little differently because you have to rush Wrecker, you have to look to burn those shields before you do anything. If you stall the game out against a Torvald, you're probably going to have a much better time against him. You have time to build up those Wreckers. His shield's not going to be as prominent. But if the Torvald does kind of get a snowball off and he makes the game really hard, he pushed in 2-0, and your team doesn't really have the chance to buy Wreckers, he's obviously going to be annoying to deal with. And that is my tank tier list. Pretty much got all the tanks in there. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Those are my opinions. You guys have anything else that I maybe forgot to include or you want me to talk about more, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.